All right, good morning, councillors and staff. I'd like to declare Annual Plan and Long-Term Plan Committee AP LTP 25/2 open and welcome you all here. Just to remind you that this meeting is being live streamed and Zoom is available. I'll start with our karakia. Whakatau mai te wairua. Whakawatia mai te hininaro, whakariti mai te tinana, kia e ai ngā mahi ai. Do we have any apologies? We were just checking, there's no sign of them on the, okay. Okay. All right, so we accept an apology for lateness. Thank you, Councillor Murray Benj, Councillor Henry. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. There are no late items. Are there any conflicts of interest anyone wishes to declare? Seems not. There are no public excluded items. There are no public forums. There are no presentations. So we can move on to the reports. So we have our utility player, Matthew Layton, here, having moved roles to introduce this first item, the adoption of schedule and fees. Thanks, Matt.
Kia ora tātou. The fees and charges are looked at every year to check, is there any inflationary costs we need to consider? Is it recovering the cost of the activity sufficiently? This is the annual revision that we've made, and it's presented to you full draft to then go out for consultation between 20th of March and 20th of April. The key papers are the statement of proposal, which sets out the key major changes, and then the schedule itself. But happy to take any questions and have them.
Okay, do we have any questions? Councillor Wickers.
Yeah, morning, Leighton. Yeah, I'll jump in. So just looking at the inflationary increases in those charges, sort of looking at 8 to 10% range, sort of how is that justified when the sort of inflation rate for this period is significantly lower? Can you sort of indicate what factors are causing that inflation? Thank you.
So the inflation rate that's used by the different activities of council varies to CPI. So CPI is the basket of goods that usual people buy. So it includes things like mobile phone plans, bread, those type of things. Whereas LGCI, Local Government Cost Index, looks at what councils buy. So bitumen, staff time, staff cost, the cost of pipes and things like that. So for each activity of council, there is a slightly different adjustment that's used.
Yeah, I suppose this is in regard to fees that are being charged for time. So what is the factors in that local government index that's causing that type of inflation outside of probably wage inflation index that would apply across the country? Could you just dig in a bit more into that?
That would probably be the major one, but I don't have the information in front of me. I can circulate that round afterwards.
I'll ask Rachel to comment, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just going to add that in many instances for those categories of fees that you see there, they may have been reasonably stagnant in or had a less than inflationary rise or even been not looked at all. So in some respects, we are catching up from a number of years of being reasonably flat with our fees and charges.
So the last question would be, is the increase in fees and charges in the building activity part of the catch-up plan to try and rectify what happened last year?
We'll go to Alison to answer that, please.
Yep, through you, Mr. Chair. So in terms of particularly in the regulatory fees, what we've looked at is a number of factors. The first was looking at the Burl inflationary figures that apply for activities within local government, particularly in the administrative side of things. And so that's a 5.6% increase. So the contributing factors to that, we would need to go back and have a look at the bill contributing factors for that. The second thing is that there's been, as you can imagine, considerable amount of work done in the past year across the regulatory services area, looking at our time and cost against activities. So in relation to particularly the building services areas that you've asked about, there has been detailed analysis of how much officer time has been going against different types of consents. So what it has meant is it's been a bit of resetting in terms of those fees based on time that's being attributed to those. Most of those fees are what we call a deposit fee. And so that allows for the general processing that would be anticipated, and there will be overs and unders, and additional fees will apply for time against consents on top of those fees.
Excuse me, Mayor Dania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a number of queries. Actually, the first one's along your lines, Councillor, because I noticed that the swimming pool inspection fees were up 21%, and the explanation around inflation seemed a bit of a stretch on that one. So I do wonder if, has that been flat in previous years and we're sort of just catching up, or what was the explanation for that one? That's my first point.
Move over here. So there's the swimming pool inspection fees have not been moved for a number of years. Again, it comes back to that same determination around how much time and officer cost has been going into those inspections. So it is a bit of a resetting around the fee and the cost recovery for the swimming pool inspections in particular.
Thank you. My next question was around the cost of public notices for liquor licenses. It's only a small increase, but I did wonder if they shouldn't have gone down, given that the ads for those are no longer in public in newspapers. They're on our website. So you'd have thought that the cost would have actually gone down rather than increase. So perhaps you can comment on that.
Yeah. So in terms of the advertising costs for public notices, so there's two factors for us. So we brought this service in as a customer service in the last 2 years. Previous to that, all public notices had to be published in the newspaper, and that cost was at the applicant's cost. It is still an option for liquor licensing applicants to put their notices in the newspaper. This cost that council has is for putting it on our website. It is approximately 50% reduction for applicants, comparable to what goes in the newspaper. It has increased. As I say, this fee's only been in for the last couple of years. We are now getting a significant increase in the number of applicants that want to use this service because of the price difference between being in the newspaper, and we have done more work around actually what it costs us to be able to undertake the service. So this fee change is a reflection of that.
So this is comparing apples with apples, is not comparing newspaper previously and online now. Okay, thank you. My next question was around the illegal dumping removal fee. Now, to me, it seems like an ingenious way to avoid us having to take out a prosecution, which is expensive and sometimes difficult. Whereas this is a fee for removing the rubbish it can be shown that someone's dumped. Is that kind of the approach that's being taken?
Can we go to Rachel, please, to answer that one?
Yes, it is absolutely an alternative to prosecution, but more particularly an alternative to infringement. There is designed to be an element of a punitive element to that, to actually dissuade people from something that is an incredible nuisance. My suggestion is that proposed fee probably does not fully reflect the amount of staff effort that goes into determining if we can find out who has dumped the goods and then dispensing of them ourselves.
Probably a lot less than a prosecution, I imagine. Yeah. And my last comment was around road closure fees. it says they've increased owing to new temporary traffic management requirements. Now, my understanding was that the direction of travel was to make temporary traffic management less onerous and reduce costs. So perhaps you can comment on that explanation. Appreciating that Cedric's not here.
Yes, I have sought a more specific answer, but at least what I can say for now is that, yes, there are moves to make more efficient and effective and more value for money the temporary traffic management processes. Those processes are being piloted throughout the country, but are not yet reflected in new guidance, is my understanding. Hence the reason why we are still operating under current guidelines. And I think possibly also the further point to make, Mr. Chair, is that certainly through this annual plan, our budget managers have endeavoured to be a whole lot more discerning or robust and evidence-based around understanding how much staff time is attributed to tasks or services for which there is an exacerbator that can be identified or a user of that service, where in the past we may not have had as much robustness around the assessment of fees and charges every annual plan year.
Right. Thank you, Rachel. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could move to Councillor Coxhead, please.
This is probably a question for you, Alison. Just the new fees for building consent, pre-application meetings, simple and complex. Understanding, so it sounds like they're on site, but may or may not be. Just correct me there or clarify if you could. And also, so typically, would everybody be using this, or would, when, proposing let's say a new build house, or is this something, can you just give me an idea or an example of who would use this and when?
I think we can say it's the full scope. So we get a number of inquiries, like a high number of inquiries from private landowners, from build companies and from developers around general matters around building consenting. So our service has been entirely ratepayer funded for this activity for quite some time. So we still want to strongly encourage people to come in, but we do need to be mindful that there is a wider cost for that, that currently is borne by ratepayers when the direct benefit is for those that are applying for their consent. So this new fee is intended to start the move towards a greater cost recovery in terms of those activities. So it will be applied very conservatively at this point in time, and it is not intended to be a barrier for people to come in and ask those questions around their building consent.
I'm hearing that it's not on site, it's actually in here or over the phone or however, correct?
It's a bit of a, generally speaking, people come into council's counter here, but we also take inquiries over the phone, and generally we do not bill for those.
Thank you. Councillor Murray Benge.
First comment, sir. Local government has been significantly responsible for the inflation rate, and I think these fees and charges aren't going to impact that. But my question is about the dog fees. They're quite significant increases, and we know the dog fees, the dog department isn't paying its way. Will this actually bring it up to speed, Alison? How much do you think this will actually cover?
So we've already canvassed the dog fees through previous workshop and meeting. So they went out for early. No, they haven't. Oh, sorry, I'm not. My apology. So no, they do not move towards the cost recovery that was anticipated by elected members, which was the 80%. It is moving towards gradually over the 3-year period of the LTP to greater cost recovery. Our teams are very mindful about ensuring that the costs are balanced against the revenue that we're getting there. So we are managing, one, putting up the fees over that 3-year period, and two, looking at all of our costs through a very robust lens to ensure that we are moving closer to that target.
Right. May I also ask, Alison, what percentage of people, owners, will not pay the fees? What trouble do we have collecting fees from dog owners?
So
And
we
will
have,
the increase, in your experience, make it worse?
so two questions there. So in terms of the number of dog owners that register, so we only know about the dogs that we know about. So we have got a 98% target that is set by council around our KPIs for 9 dogs being registered. We actively engage with our community to ensure that people register their dogs, but I would anticipate there is a percentage of the population that may avoid dog registration, much as there will be people that will avoid other things like paying their vehicle registration and paying their taxes, those types of things. So we're no different from other agencies in that respect. In terms of, sorry, your last question, Margaret? The second question? In terms of, yeah, so it is 98%. We have achieved that for the last 3 years in particular. And we have had higher than 98% compliance in the past. There is a significant amount of work that our officers do in terms of supporting people getting their payments through. So we do door knocking, we have text reminders. It is something that we actively seek people to register their dogs. There is obviously a balance between if we put up fees that people will become more non-compliant around payment of those registration fees, and it's a fair risk. What that would look like at the end of the year, I guess we will just need to kind of watch, take a watching brief around that.
Thank you. Just for councillors Joyce and Sol's benefit, we are dealing with the first matter on the agenda in regard to the fees and charges and questions at the moment. I have one more, Councillor Henry.
My question's around a relatively new procedure for council, and that's the online system objective build. And I see in here that, and I've had a bit of dealing with some people who've had difficulty in uplifting, and we've had help from staff on that. But I believe that this is the only way that people can actually submit their applications. There's no other way. That's one question. I've got some more.
So the council's approach is that we do online submission of building consents. Our current provider is a company called Objective, and they have got a build portal at the front. It is exactly the same as Tauranga City Council and most other councils. They have advised us that their model for charging for lodging of consents has changed. It used to be a set fee that would apply for every consent lodged. It is now moving to a model which is based on the value of that building consent and the complexity of that consent. Those fees are outside of our control, and those are being applied to every council that uses Objective Build portal.
So the next question is the online system fee charged on all applications based on the type and value of consent. At what point does the customer find out, and how do they find out what those costs are going to be?
So that information is available on our website, and it will be, as you put your consent through, it will be represented in terms of the costs that are there. I'm not exactly sure that I've never lodged a building consent before, but
neither have I.
It is part of the system that you know. For us, there should be no surprises around people lodging consents.
So I think we heard about it last year. There were some hiccups with the running of system of that. They have been ironed out.
There is, you talk about Objective Build. It
was the platform.
The platform. There have been some issues in terms of the operation of it, and we have addressed those directly with Objective. So it is their portal.
Yeah, so they've modified all those for you. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Alison.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce.
Sorry, we got caught in traffic and we're late. And please forgive me if this has been raised already, but the proposed dog fees, registration fees, how do they compare with our neighbours? It was a question sort of asked last week, so I'm hoping someone's gone and got the answer.
So in terms of, are you talking about with Tauranga City or?
Tauranga City, but someone suggested Matamata Piako could be a good comparison. So if this hasn't, looking under your face, I think this question was not passed on to you.
This question was not passed on to me, so apologies.
It would be
for
good
that.
to get an idea of how we compare with our peers. Obviously, Tauranga is where we traditionally compare, but we also, there are other councils around that have our mix of rural and urban. It'll be good, if not today, obviously, because no one's told you, to get some idea of how we compare so at some stage. The other one was, I understand people say their dog's always beautiful and never misbehaves, and why am I paying so much? So if we look at the naughty dog section, the impounding of dogs, the seizure fees, are we recovering 80% of our costs there? Because that would actually be an area where the guilty should be paying their fair share. I noticed, for example, an unregistered dog, second impounding, third impounding, each impounding is a painful process for council staff and costs us, but the fee doesn't seem to keep going up. So wondering if we are, even if we are not recovering 80% of our costs across the whole operation, are we recovering it in the naughty dog section?
So we do look at the 80% across the whole activity. So in terms of breaking that down to which parts of the subparts of the activity are recovering 80%, I don't have that information.
I think it would be a good area to look at, because some of the people do complain that the law-abiding dogs are paying too much and the non-law-abiding dog owners are not paying enough. I see I've just got an email from Adele on the Tauranga fees. Thank you, Adele.
Through the chair. Full dog currently. Fees for Tauranga City currently $125 for a dog, and Matamata Piako is $157 for a full dog registration.
That's spayed, neutered, the
full dog registration. It says
so full dog is
Tauranga City does not have a discounted rate for D6 dogs. It is a single rate for all dogs. They do not have categories of working dogs or D6 dogs. So it's a one size fits all.
Right. And what's the proportion for us between neutered dogs or D6 dogs, and any idea what our mix is?
So it's 60% of our dogs are D6'd.
It's a good way to stop problems.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Councillor Daly.
Alison, there is a question, but a bit of context. I heard from a person in Pukahina that a dog was seized from a problem owner, and it went to the pound, and the comment was that he was in no hurry to go and pick it up. He let it go to the pound because it had done a bit of an attack on someone, but he was in no hurry to go and pick it up because there was no extra cost for him to leave it there. But I see there is a daily sustenance fee, $20 or so, and but the first seizure fee, $132. That's the only cost that this person, any person in that situation would pay. Do we actually charge all the available charges like the daily sustenance? Is that always charged?
It's on a case-by-case basis, councillor. So if the dog is unregistered, the owner would have to pay the registration fee and potentially a penalty fee for late registration if it wasn't paid on time. It would pay the impounding fee, and there would be a sustenance fee.
So you're saying we do cover all available costs in that situation?
That is our practice.
Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions about under curbside collection. So I noticed that it says there's an education fee of $200 for non-compliant pay tag contaminations. What does that look like on the ground? That's a lot of money, and I'm envisioning going to the house and door knocking and saying, hey, you're doing it wrong. But that shouldn't be $200. I just wondered if anyone had a comment there.
Is Kerry online available to answer that one? So what you've described is how I understand it. It's for repeated contamination where you put in the wrong stuff in the, say, in the recycle bin, which results in actually that whole load having to be dumped. So it's going back and making sure that that charge is recovered from that person. They usually have a conversation first before we go to this extent of using the fee.
And just the last question, I noticed that a lot of these, like, I get a lot of complaints that the bin hasn't been picked up, and whether it's their fault or not, I don't really know that. But I noticed there's quite a few charges there. But how does that get billed to the ratepayer? And then if you had multiple repeated service attempts, you know, that's all billed to the ratepayer, and then potentially the rent could, or, you know, it'll cause problems between the renter and the owner eventually if you had multiple fines, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's something that's addressed through a case-by-case basis, bearing that in mind, because you want the person using the service to pay for that, not necessarily the ratepayer.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Sol.
Thank you, sir. Mine is back with dogs, and in your notes at the end there, I see there's note C, and this is to do with discounts on multiple ownership or multiple dogs in a property. And basically, I'm interested as to how this works, or is to work with dogs that aren't so often happening now, I guess, but dogs that are imported for a particular period into New Zealand for exhibiting and for maybe stud duties or to go and frequent with another dog here or whatever. How does this actually get managed? How is this looked at or seen? I mean, if somebody is found with a dog, obviously at that point maybe unregistered and is here for a period and it's not necessarily contractual, how does that get managed?
In all my experience in animal control, I've never had encountered an issue where we've had a stud dog that has been imported that we have addressed for non-registration. So normally they have specific import provisions, and they're either imported for ownership or they're imported for a specific period and then they go. And for those ones, as I say, in all my experience, I have never encountered a situation where we've had to follow up on registration for a dog that's been brought in for stud purposes. So great to have a different scenario come across my desk, but no, haven't had one of those before, Councillor.
Yeah, well, because I certainly have been in that position, obviously, as I say, in years past. And it is just something I just wonder. To be honest, I like your answer. Okay, it's not an issue that's come up, in other words, and if it sort of did, you're not too interested. But it just does affect perhaps these people that have multiple dogs. And I know I had dogs that I would exhibit for people in the UK and in Australia, and they were here for a period, not necessarily a set time, and they were also here for other duties as well. But if you're comfy and not have the issue, I'm very happy with that.
Okay, thank you for all those questions. Moving on then, if we could go to the recommendations. There on page 6, is it? Yep, thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Murray Benge, Councillor Coxhead. Is there anyone wishes to speak to the issue? Thank you, Councillor Wickers.
Just want to acknowledge the significant work that's gone into getting down to make sure that these charges relate to the activity that they are associated with, and to relieve the burden on the general rate. So well done. There is a good news one hidden right in the bowels of it, is the new fee for boundary adjustment is significantly reduced the cost. If you're doing a boundary adjustment, it's way cheaper now. So well done. Thank you.
Right, we have any other speakers? Councillor Murray Benge.
I think, sir, that you think of all the dog lovers that we've got within the district, and it's really we've got to do our best to make sure that we pay our way or they pay their way. And I think the service that our dog section deliver is really quite superb. We have a good reputation, and I think much and all, as a lot of people will be disappointed that the fees are going up, I think they'll understand that we have to try and pay our way, and that dog owners should not subsidise other dog owners, which in fact does happen. And I'm not sure how you get around that. But anyway, sir, happy to move it.
All right, thank you. Looks like we've used the speakers, so I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carry. So, thank you there. We're moving on now to item 10.2, the draft financial contributions. And so, Peter, 79, 77, 74. Okay, well, take your pick. Oh, sorry, I was reading the attachment page number rather than the recommendation page number. My apologies. Okay, Peter, do you want to make some comments, an introduction?
Yeah, overall, we haven't had a great change in theory and FinCos in terms of we've just finished our LTP, and the changes probably relate to items further out in our schedule rather than the annual plan itself, but that raises its own issue that FinCos do stand alone in terms of its timing around a rolling 10-year model. Differs a little bit from just looking at an annual plan process. However, the fees have been set for the year based on the knowledge of our LTP modified for known changes in certain areas. Those areas have been outlined, mainly driven out of the structure plan reviews for initially Mokora, but subsequently for Karikari and Te Puki. Numbers are driving. I guess increases are driving upwards from changes there primarily. I'll take it as read and probably field some questions.
Okay, thank you. First one up then, Councillor Joyce.
Just a question that's actually come to me that I didn't know the answer to. So, for example, with Karikari, we're obviously looking at outfall options, and the variations in price possibilities are very wide. So what happens if we obviously set our FinCos with the best estimate as we do, but that estimate subsequently goes down? You know, we actually end up doing a cheaper option. Is that just sort of a windfall, or does that go back to the people who pay them?
I might refer to Rachel in terms of the
Ask the question again.
The legality, but yeah, the issue being that under DCs we would be probably required to consider refunding. Under FCs, I don't believe that is the case. But again, I'll defer to someone else here.
And that is why currently they are reviewed annually so that we don't continue to get out of alignment. But Adele.
Through the chair. So yes, there is a difference between financial contributions and development contributions. And yes, if there was a price change under the DCs, it is likely that you'd have to provide that refund back to the developers. But this is a fee setting exercise through financial contributions and with the best available information at the time. So there's ups and downs, by every project, not necessarily just one either. So yes, best available information for a fee setting for 1 year. And that's how we work that through. So that's why we do QS estimates and update the prices that are sitting in our 10-year schedule for that very reason.
Right, thank you. Councillor Ray.
I'm just looking at the lovely table with the numbers there. I'm just trying to understand why Makitu would be slightly higher than Waihi Beach, like given population size. Maybe there's just not something that I don't understand about it, but I just wondered what gets you to that percentage?
typically based on the growth model, which is the population change over the period. So you've outlined two of our schemes that have had an intervention in terms of, I guess, looking at the debt balance for Waihi Beach, for example, and also looking at the population growth population estimates for Makatu. So we've made something sort of offline adjustments that basically create a fee, and that fee needs to be reviewed. Some decisions need to be made, A, on debt carried at Waihi Beach, and B, on population estimates for Makatu. So you have outlined two that don't fit a typical pattern.
Okay.
I'll ask Rachel to add a comment, please.
And just specifically in relation to the point that Peter has made around population estimates for Makatu, there we are talking about the Te Arawa land that was factored into the capacity for the wastewater treatment plant many, many years ago, which hasn't been realised.
Okay, Councillor Murray-Bench.
How disadvantaged are those sitting outside the structure plan that council has designated? How disadvantaged will they be? What's our approach for if you need more land for housing and we've got structure plans tied down to these areas? What's the impact for our council?
Rachel.
I think through you, Mr. Chair, the response to that is unanticipated and significant unplanned infrastructure costs. So the reason why we have a future development strategy is to send clear signals to the market the way that growth is anticipated for the sub-region. And as a council, we can move forward understanding what the infrastructure costs would be for us in opening up those new areas or new stages of development, and how they're going to be funded. So I think, quite simply put, if we had sort of unfettered development or out of sequence development, the risk is that local authorities wouldn't be able to bear, or wouldn't have the balance sheet capacity to bear the cost of the infrastructure necessary to unlock those areas if it's not well planned.
Rachel, Phil Twyford, he had a policy whereby if the development was large enough, the cost of the infrastructure could fall on the sections and not on the council. And I'm not quite sure that we've got big enough land space available, but it's something that may well come in the future. And so I just signal that the structure plan and that sits outside it might cause us significant challenges in the future.
So what is the question?
It was a statement, really. I was asking, Mr. Chairman, I've asked that the question has been answered. I asked my question. And that was, how did we cope with the structure plans that we've got and those that want to do development outside of a structure plan?
Thank you. If there are no other questions, we'll go to the recommendations then, please. So do we have a mover or a seconder? Councillor Henry and Councillor Ray. Are there any speakers? Seems not. All right. I will put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carry. Well done. So we move on to the last matter on the agenda, which is the communication plan. And I'll read the right place this time. It's on page 114. Welcome, Rebecca. Do you have any comments of introduction?
No, I think we can leave the paper as read. The only comment I would make that is not mentioned in the comms and engagement plan is about the rates calculator. And that is in train to be part of the annual plan page. The information is currently with our website developer. Obviously not my area of expertise, but we don't have an exact time frame of when that will be up, but it is in train at the moment. So that is part of our information informing our community approach. Otherwise, I will take some questions.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce.
You anticipated one of my questions already, which was raised last week, so thank you for that. It would be good to get a heads up when it does go live, because it's obviously a fairly useful tool for people. There's also the sample properties table. Obviously, it was a very complicated table when we were looking at this. It would be good to have the samples for the end result. Will they be available anytime soon?
So the sample properties that were available as part of the workshop on the 26th will be as part of the information that will go on the website.
When they're ready, can that just be flicked around to us so we have them up front?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Henry.
This may be a disappointment to some of our people who come regularly to the table with cap in hand. And I'm just wondering, when was the last time that we didn't go out for consultation on the annual plan?
I believe it was 2017 that we didn't go out, but Emily, who was part of that process, is.
Thanks, Rebecca. So 2017, to my recollection, is the last time that we resolved not to consult and put out a kind of lower scale consultation efforts, kind of more on that inform space of the engagement.
So the explanation will be something on the lines of what you've got in your report today. So, okay, thank you.
So the mayor's ready to move, is that my indication? We have a seconder, Councillor Coxhead. Any speakers? Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I'm just happy to highlight one of the key elements of this is the reduced rates increase of 7.4, and I hope that fine favour that's is acceptable to the ratepayers.
Thank you. Councillor Murray Benge.
One of the things that last comment begs the question, what will the rate increase proposed be for the following 2 years or 3 years? And will there be significant reduction in our rate increases? And I think people will want to know that. It looks good this year, it probably could come down even more. But at the same time, sir, what's it going to be for the next 2 years? Is it just been introduced for election year? Bunch question.
We very clearly know that we went out with a proposed increase in the LTP in excess of 10%, and we've canvassed the circumstances that have changed to bring that down. And none of them relate to the point you made. But as far as the years ahead, yes, it's a very, very valid point you raise. What will those be? But if you've observed how much things have changed in 1 year, it would be premature for us to be making predictions further out than that. So certainly I endorse your hope that we would be bringing the increases lower as we have been able to this year for future years, but it's premature to be signalling that to our ratepayers. So, Councillor Joyce.
I realise this is going a bit beyond the communications plan, but it's been raised. I mean, 3 things are helping us this year, right? Inflation has dropped, interest rates have dropped, and our staff have found a reasonable sum of operational savings, right? Those things, the first 2 we don't control, but the path looks good. The third one is a very welcome offering from staff, and should not be reversed in future years. In fact, we're going through a period now where it's going to be substantial change, depending what happens with our waters assets, right? You know, it's become, it's obviously clear that some of the waters costs are in rates rather than user charges. Yeah, our rates in a couple of years, if we do go into a CCO model, the actual rates bill you'll get should be substantially lower. And the challenge for this council is making sure those savings are passed on and that we don't come up with a whole bunch of new projects to boost our rates back up again. So, you know, looking forward 2 or 3 years to Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour's point, it's really hard at the moment because this council is probably going to look completely different in a couple of years. It's going to be eroding reserves, yeah, and a few other bits and pieces versus what it is now, which is, you know, a large part of our effort goes into the waters. And that will be in a different bill for people, right? Odds on. I mean, decisions haven't been made yet, but odds on that's where it's going. So, you know, we've got to look very clearly at what are the savings possible from being a much smaller council.
Thank you. Councillor Daly.
I'm just wondering, are we allowing questions in this at this time? Because I could make a statement and you might want to answer it, but just occurred to me that one of the reasons our rates are lower, and it's referred to in 3 reasons: lower inflation, decreased interest rates, and cost savings. Has there been an offset between cost savings and fees and charges increases? Is there a connection between those two?
I don't believe so, but I'll seek advice from staff. Oh, Adele's coming.
Through the chair. So our fees and charges are derived from our revenue and financing policy, and that's the recovery requirement of where we're expecting our cost to land and what gets recovered back through charges versus what gets covered through a rate. So it depends, it's probably my response to you as to what the area is and how we set those and what our recovery back through rates is.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. With that, I will put we had a mover in a second, didn't we? Yes, I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carry. So there is no information for receipt, so I am happy to declare our meeting closed at 10:20 and we will break for morning tea.